We are back and we got Nelson's battles in 3D, the Nile. This is chronologically on the playlist of what's next, so this is what we're going to do. Might have some spoilers about the entirety of Egypt, but we just going to go with the flow, shall we? Guys, welcome. We have the Napoleonic series. We're at the Nile now with leaving Horatio Nelson. You got to hit that subscribe button at this point. We getting into it. We got to go. Let's go.
An epic history, Drakenfell collaboration. In 1792, the French Revolution sparked a European conflict that would last a generation. A struggle for mastery of Europe and the world. A contest fought on land and sea. In this war of shifting alliances, the most enduring rivalry was between France and Britain. Britain could not challenge France on land, but at sea, it was a different matter.
Oh yeah.
Britain's Royal Navy was as dominant on the waves as Napoleon was to prove on land. And in an age when Britain had many skilled naval commanders, one stood out above the rest. Horatio Nelson. Bold, inspiring and brilliant. For the British, he'd become a national hero and legend. These are the stories of his greatest battles.
The Nile. Duty is the great business of a sea officer. All private considerations must give way to.
1798. The 6th year of the French Revolutionary Wars, and France is winning. General Bonaparte's brilliant victories in Italy have forced Austria to sue for peace.
For now.
Spain, once France's enemy, is now an ally. Britain is the only major power still at war with the French Republic. British naval power makes a cross-channel invasion impossible. So the French government decides to strike at Britain in direct. If the French succeed and destroy British influence and trade in the region, they will strike a powerful blow against their last major enemy. The previous year, the British defeated a Spanish fleet at the Battle of Cape St. Vincent.
Which was embarrassing for Spain.
But the Royal Navy currently has no major forces in the Mediterranean. Therefore, the French believe they can sail to Egypt in relative safety.
Unscathed.
When the British learn that a large French fleet is assembling at Toulon, they send Rear Admiral Nelson with 3 ships of the line to investigate. But he is driven south by gales, just as the French, with 13 ships of the line, several frigates and hundreds of transports, set sail. Bonaparte has given the British the slip.
It is an old saying, the devil's children have the devil's luck. I cannot find or at this moment learn where the French fleet are gone to.
Nelson is reinforced with 11 ships of the line. And learning that the French have stopped at and captured Malta, he correctly deduces that Egypt is their destination.
That's crazy that because the pit stop in Malta, they were able to reconcile that it wasn't just Malta and then turning back around, it was to go to Egypt. I wonder how he thought about that and how he thought that was the destination.
He sets off at full speed to intercept. The British warships are much faster than the French invasion force,
Why?
but they overtake their quarry on a foggy night.
Yes, yeah, curious. Why are they faster? Like, is it just the design?
And though the two fleets pass within a few miles of each other, neither side spots the other. Unaware of their near miss, the British race on to Egypt. Arriving at Alexandria, Nelson sees no sign of the French and heads north to continue the hunt.
Just like that. That
He
miss.
misses Bonaparte's fleet
Crazy.
by 24 hours. The French land safely in Egypt and march inland.
And real quick, like, what does anyone know? Why did the British then push to Syria around Cyprus and come back? Was it to look for the French? Why wouldn't they just go back the way they came? Was it really just didn't know where they were landing? Like, they're going towards the Levant area now, so like.
The French land safely in Egypt and march inland, en route to a famous victory at the Battle of the Pyramids. The French fleet remains at anchor in Abu Qir Bay. More than a month later, word finally reaches Nelson in Sicily that the French fleet is in Egypt. Racing back to Alexandria with his squadron, he arrives on the 1st of August. He quickly locates the French fleet and prepares to attack. The French fleet is commanded by Admiral François-Paul Bruez-d'Aguillet.
That's a mouthful, but alright.
He is an experienced commander who saw action at the Battle of the Chesapeake during the American Revolution.
All these admirals and sea commanders, they're just all over the world. That's the crazy fun thing about naval warfare is it's not, segmented to just one piece of land. It's global.
Now a rare thing in the Navy of the French Republic, a 45-year-old aristocrat who's neither fled abroad nor been guillotined. Recently promoted to Vice Admiral, he has a reputation for personal courage mixed with strategic caution. Admiral Bruez has one objective: to preserve his fleet. Bonaparte's army relies on his ships for communications and supplies from France. What's more, when Nelson arrives, almost a third of his crews are ashore, foraging for water and supplies. Admiral Bruez concludes he must fight a defensive battle. His fleet, 13 ships of the line and 4 frigates, will remain anchored in Abu Qir Bay, inline and just under a mile from shore. His own flagship, the first-rate 120-gun L'Orient, is in the center. Shoals and shallow water protect their western flank, meaning the French, with their reduced crews, only have to man the guns on one side. Bruez issues orders for each French ship to secure itself to its neighbors, fore and aft, with heavy cables. The fleet is to form an unbreakable wall of ships, ready to resist any attack. Bruez well knows the reputation of his enemy, Rear Admiral Sir Horatio Nelson. The previous year, Nelson had been feted for
At the Cape of St. Vincent, right?
his heroic role at the Battle of Cape St. Vincent.
Cape St.
But 5 months later, he'd lost his right arm following a failed attack on the Spanish at Tenerife.
I did not know that. I kind of knew that, but I didn't know how he did it.
He'd spent the rest of the year convalescing ashore, and therefore missed the British victory over the Dutch at Camperdown that October. Something he found so frustrating, he declared he'd happily have given his other arm for the chance to take part. Having found the enemy fleet, Nelson is determined to engage and destroy it. And he has sound strategic reasons for a high-risk attack on the French. If Nelson can destroy their fleet, the French army in Egypt will be stranded, far from home, amid a hostile climate and population.
Yeah, not good signs.
It will mean the failure of Bonaparte's expedition, without a single redcoat stepping ashore.
That would be insane.
Nelson has 13 third-rate ships of the line, plus the 50-gun Leander, and a small sloop for running messages. Facing 13 French ships of the line and 4 frigates, the two forces are evenly matched, though the French flagship L'Orient, with 120 guns, is far and away the most powerful warship present.
Oh yeah.
Nelson decides on a night attack that will exploit Bruez's caution. He will advance along the seaward side of the French line, and when his vanguard reaches the French flagship, L'Orient, his ships will drop anchor.
Really?
His entire fleet will take on half the French fleet, with northerly winds preventing the remaining French ships from joining the battle.
That's just so smart. So strategic right there.
Nelson's plan is bold and simple, but it will not go as intended.
Before this time tomorrow, I shall have gained the peerage of Westminster Abbey.
The British fleet begins its final approach at 6 p.m, under full sail, in line astern. The 74-gun HMS Goliath is in the lead. She is followed by HMS Zealous and HMS Audacious.
I love the names.
The wind is from the northwest. The seas calm. The British do not have reliable maps of the bay, meaning there is a real risk of running aground. So HMS Goliath has to take careful soundings as she goes, checking the sea's depth. When Goliath rounds the entrance to Aboukir Bay, marked by shoals and a small island, the British begin their turn south, to sail with the wind towards the French line.
Okay.
The French have been observing the British approach, and at 6:20 p.m, as Goliath comes within range, they open fire. Nelson.
They were not waiting around. My goodness. Like, I was expecting them to wait till they kind of got aligned, but no.
Has always encouraged his officers to use their initiative. So when Captain Foley, commanding HMS Goliath, sees there is a gap between the French ships and the shoals, he makes a snap decision to sail down it.
Oh, and there's no guns facing that way.
Goliath's course will be followed by Zealous, Audacious, Orion, and Theseus. Nelson's flagship, HMS Vanguard, will now lead the rest of the fleet down the seaward side of the French line.
Not a good look for Napoleon's
Captain
fleet.
Foley's bold decision exploits a disastrous oversight by Admiral Bruez. He has assumed that the shoals make it impossible for him to be attacked from the landward side. Now, not only will his vanguard be doubled, attacked on both sides, but French guns on the landward side are not even ready for action. There are barely enough sailors to man them.
This is just going to be disastrous.
As Goliath passes across the bow of Guerrier, she fires a raking broadside into her, round shot smashing its way down the length of the ship. Each following British ship blasts Guerrier in the same merciless manner. HMS Orion takes a wider track to avoid the melee developing at the head of the French line. This will bring her past the French frigate Sérieuse in the shallows. According to convention, ships of the line did not normally fire on frigates during fleet actions. But when the captain of Sérieuse fires on Orion,
all bets are off now.
he waives this protection.
I mean, yeah, it's defensive.
Orion holds her fire until she passes the French frigate, then returns fire at point-blank range. Her heavy broadside smashes the French frigate to pieces.
Oh yeah.
The British landward column now drops anchor to take on the French vanguard, while the seaward column, led by Nelson aboard HMS Vanguard, arrives to hit the French from the other side. Each ship's captain singles out a target and drops anchor alongside. Vanguard alongside Spartiate, Minotaur against Aquilon, Defense against Peuple Souverain. 5 French ships are now under attack from 8 British ships, most of them from both sides. HMS Bellerophon and Majestic now join the battle. They head for the center of the French line.
Flagship.
Bellerophon aims for Franklin, but overshoots and comes alongside Admiral Bruez's formidable flagship, L'Orient. HMS Majestic also misjudges her approach, becoming entangled with Tonon and fighting 2 French ships simultaneously.
Really?
By 7 p.m., the light is fading. 2 miles north, the last British ship, HMS Culloden, cannot make out the edge of the shoals and runs aground.
Darn.
HMS Leandre.
I bet you were embarrassed to be on that ship, because everybody else is, you know, being courageous, fighting in this battle, and you ran ashore.
And the sloop Mutine divert to try to tow Culloden clear.
Okay.
But it will prove a futile task. Culloden's fate shows just how small the room for error has been during the British approach. The French vanguard has now been under heavy attack for 30 minutes. Conquerant has been completely dismasted.
Jeez.
Her captain is dying. A third of her crew are casualties. She is first to strike her colors. But it's not all one-way traffic. HMS Bellerophon is heavily outgunned in her contest with L'Orient. "200 men, a third of her crew, have been killed or wounded, and she's lost her main and mizzen masts. Her captain gives the order to cut the anchor cable, so the ship will drift out of the firing line. Around 8:30, 2 British stragglers, HMS Swiftsure and Alexander, join the battle late. In the smoke and gloom, they pass the drifting hulk of Bellerophon and nearly fire on her by mistake. Swiftsure and Alexander break the enemy line either side of L'Orient, pouring raking fire into the French flagship. Aboard Vanguard, Nelson's been hit in the forehead by a splinter.
Oh.
His face streaming blood. He thinks it's the end. "I am killed," he announces. "Remember me to my wife."
Dang.
But he's soon stitched up by the ship's surgeon and back in command.
Get back out there!
The wounds of French commander Admiral Bruez aboard L'Orient are far more serious. Horribly injured in the face and hands, he's then hit by a cannonball that removes his legs. He still refuses to leave his post on deck. and dies there. As darkness falls, Guerrier and Spartiate, which have been under heavy fire for more than 2 hours, both strike their colours. Around the same time, HMS Leander breaks the French line between Peuple Souverain and Franklin, raking both. The battle is turning decisively in the Royal Navy's favour. Aquillon fights hard, turning herself to rake the British flagship HMS Vanguard. But in turn, she is raked by HMS Minotaur and hauls down her colours at 9:25.
But how many is left in the battle at this point?
Peuple Souverain tries to escape by cutting her anchor cable and drifting down the French line. Lorient mistakes her for the enemy and opens fire.
Friendly fire.
Minutes later, the flicker of flames is seen through the lower deck gun ports of Lorient.
Oh no, it's about to blow up.
The fire spreads deck by deck until the massive French flagship is ablaze from stem to stern. Every onlooker knows that deep within Lorient's hold lies her grand magazine, containing 30 to 40 tons of gunpowder. All ships in the vicinity take emergency measures. Gun ports are closed, and ships' sides, decks and sails are soaked with water from the elm pumps in anticipation of the explosion to come. French ships Tonnant, Heureux and Mercure cut their anchor cables, hoping to drift to a safe distance. Around 10 p.m, the fire reaches Lorient's grand magazine. The warship is obliterated in a colossal explosion, killing everyone left on board, and many who jumped overboard to save themselves.
Wow.
More than 90% of the ship's crew are killed, around 1,000 men. The sheer force of the explosion spares nearby ships, as flaming wreckage is blasted up and over them. Stunned, both sides stop firing to gaze in horror at the spectacle. British ships lower boats to rescue the few survivors.
Really?
After a 10-minute lull, firing resumes.
That's interesting. British ships rescued French? Really?
But after the appalling destruction of their flagship, the French are running out of fight. Swiftsure and Defence turn their guns on Franklin and soon force her surrender. Tonnant, having cut her cables and unable to maneuver, drifts helplessly into the French rearguard. These three ships, unable to sail into the wind to join the action, have looked on impotently as the carnage unfolds.
Darn. Crazy. This is crazy. Victory is not a name strong enough for such a scene. Alliteration.
Dawn on the 2nd of August revealed a terrible scene of death and destruction. John Nichol of the Goliath was a witness. I went on deck to view the state of the fleets, and an awful sight it was. The whole bay was covered with dead bodies, mangled, wounded and scorched. Not a bit of clothes on them, except their trousers. The entire French vanguard had been captured or destroyed. Heureux and Mercure have run aground in their panicked attempt to escape the explosion of Lorient. The 4 surviving French ships of the line will now attempt to fight their way clear. 2 run aground. Only the Généraux, Guillaume Tell, and 2 frigates escape the devastation.
Well, at least they escaped.
The captain of the Guillaume Tell, Pierre Villeneuve, will face sharp criticism for failing to play a greater part in the battle.
Well, what is he supposed to do? Change how the wind blows?
7 years later, as fleet commander, he will face Nelson again at Trafalgar. British losses are 218 killed, 678 wounded.
Okay.
3 ships are badly
900.
damaged: Bellerophon, Majestic, and Culloden. French losses are around 1,700 killed, and more than 3,000 taken prisoner, many of them wounded. 2 ships of the line and 2 frigates have been sunk. 9 have been captured.
That's insane.
Of these, 3 are damaged beyond repair and burned. The remaining 6 enter service with the Royal Navy.
Oh, wow.
To cap it all, most of the French treasury that General Bonaparte was relying on to fund his Egyptian campaign
On the Lorient.
had been lost with Lorient.
That's insane. Best gain the victory, then make the best use of it if you can.
Nelson's brilliant victory at the Nile had major consequences. The balance of naval power in the Mediterranean shifted dramatically in Britain's favour. General Bonaparte's expeditionary force in Egypt was cut off, and though its commander slipped back to France the following year, his army was forced to surrender in 1801.
Sucks for
The
them.
French garrison of Malta also surrendered, the island becoming a British protectorate. French defeat encouraged her enemies to form a new second coalition and renew the war. Nelson was the hero of the hour, feted in royal courts from London to St. Petersburg and Constantinople. He received jewels, medals, ceremonial swords, and his long-coveted peerage, Baron Nelson of the Nile.
Of the Nile. How fitting. How fitting.
The Nile was one of the most decisive and crushing naval battles in history. Some historians argue it was the most significant Nelson ever fought. But the battle with which Nelson's name was to be forever linked would be fought 7 years later,
Trafalgar.
off Cape Trafalgar.
Yeah.
Have you ever wanted to hear?
That's insane, guys. Wow. Like, we heard about it in the previous video, kind of like, you know, the fleet had got destroyed. But this really shows what happened and the tactics and the ability to kind of use nature and the wind, per se, all into your favor. It's just an embarrassment of riches for the British. And then they're able to capture Malta. I don't know if that's a spoiler or whatnot, but that's insane. Insane, guys. We are getting closer to getting back to the next coalition, but we got another Egyptian battle to react to next. So I'm excited to do that. But guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I really do. Subscribe if you haven't already. Guys, thank you. Peace out.